Colleen, this is Michelle. Did you want to test Christy's audio?
She's not on yet. I'm just waiting for her to get on still. I thought she had the link. She did not. I sent it to her about 2 minutes ago.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle,
Go ahead.
can you ask Kurt to hold on a moment? I'm not sure if Christy's not getting my emails. I just want to, I need to call her. If we could just hold a minute before we start the meeting.
Certainly.
Thank you. Christy, you want to test your audio real quick?
Hey, test. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Okay, cool.
I think we can go ahead and begin.
Recording in progress.
It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, October 12th, 2021. This is the Douglas County Planning Commission meeting. And we have 4 members here at the historic Douglas County Courthouse. And Commissioner Candell is on via Zoom. Christy, if you could acknowledge that you can hear us and we can hear you.
Yes, Christy here.
Thank you very much. We do have 5 members. That is more than a quorum. So we will begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Brian, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Brian. We'll begin now with public comment. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and control of the Planning Commission. Additional public comment periods may be allowed on individual agenda items at the discretion of the chairperson. It is requested that members of the public comment on those agenda items when they are considered. In addition to opening public comment will also be taken on each item listed on the agenda when they are discussed by the Planning Commission. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker on matters over which the Planning Commission has jurisdiction, supervision, or control. The Planning Commission wants to encourage the respectful consideration of all views by members of the public. if the content is willfully disruptive of the meeting by being irrelevant, repetitious, slanderous, offensive, inflammatory, irrational, or amounts to a personal attack, or interfering with the rights of others, the individual will be asked to stop speaking. We do have timing lights. You have 3 minutes for each public comment. And when the light goes yellow, that means you're down to 30 seconds, and then the light will go red and you should stop speaking. So at this time, public comment is open for anyone who has items that they would like to bring to our attention that are within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Please step up to the microphone and state your name and sign in if you have public comment at this point. It does not appear that we have public comment at this point, so we will close public comment at about 3 minutes after 1, and we'll move forward to approval of the agenda. This is for possible action, approval of the proposed agenda. The Planning Commission reserves the right to take items in a different order, to combine 2 or more agenda items for consideration, and to remove items from the agenda or delay discussion relating to an item on the agenda at any point. I would like to announce before we consider approval of the agenda that we do have 5 members of the Planning Commission here. 4 constitutes a quorum, but we would also need 4 votes in favor of any item that came up to approve that item. So I would want to make the applicants aware that they have the right to request a continuance, given that we have only 5 members who will be voting on issues. And they should have that opportunity at the time when their item is considered. But I did want to make that clear for all parties involved. Is there public comment on approval of the agenda? Seeing no public comment on the approval of the agenda, we'll come back to the Planning Commission for a discussion or a motion to approve the agenda.
A motion to approve the agenda.
Brian moves to approve the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Maureen seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on approval of the agenda? Seeing no discussion, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed to approving the agenda? So on this vote, there's 5 votes aye and no votes nay, and the agenda is approved. We'll now move to approval of the minutes. This is for possible action, approval of the draft minutes of the Planning Commission meeting September 14th, 2021. I have reviewed the minutes and I see that they are in good order. Is there public comment on approval of the minutes? Seeing no public comment on approval of the minutes, then we'll come back to the Planning Commission for observations or comments on approval of the minutes. Seeing no comments on approval of the minutes, then I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I enter a motion to approve.
Nick moves that the minutes be approved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Brian seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on approval of the minutes? Seeing no discussion, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor will vote aye.
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 Any nays?
I will abstain as I was not present at that meeting.
Thank you very much, Maureen. So this, there'd be 4 votes aye, no votes nay, and 1 abstention. So the approval of the minutes is adopted. So we'll move on to agenda item number 1, and I will read this into the record. This is for possible action. Discussion on a tentative commercial subdivision map to subdivide a 6.73 acre parcel into 20 parcels, the smallest being 0.10 acres and the largest 3.65 acres. The project site is located at the northeast corner of Buckeye Road and Mueller Parkway in the LI Light Industrial Zoning District in the Minden Community Plan. The applicant is Bruce Scott, Resource Concepts, representing the owner, David Park, Park Ranch Holdings, LLC. APN 1320-28-000-043. Land Division Application DP 21-0225. Lucille, you've prepared the materials on this, so you can go ahead and make your presentation. Then we will hear from the applicant, and then we'll move forward on possible motions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Lucille Rayo, Community Development. The subject parcel is located along Buckeye Road, and it's east of Mueller Parkway. It's within the light industrial zoning district. It's within the industrial land use. It's also within the Minden Urban Reserve Area. This is what the parcel looks like today. And this is what the request is for: subdivision map, commercial subdivision map. These are the parcels, the 20 parcels that they're requesting with today's request. This is the improvement plans that they provided along with the map. So the project is for a 20-lot industrial zone subdivision. The lots will range in size from 0.10 acres to 3.65 acres. It's intended in the future to serve as a storage facility with individual ownership of the parcels. NRS allows a commercial subdivision map. Sometimes people will come for a commercial subdivision map and they'll just ask for the boundary line, which would be just that, a boundary around the parcel, and then they would do records of survey to create the parcels. The applicant is requesting 20 parcels with this application. State law allows the creation of parcels through records of survey, and that's in the statute 278469. So a record of survey contains two or more lots or parcels. The surveyor for whom the record of survey is made shall place upon the map a statement of facts. So that's how the records of survey are created through the survey process. The reason for that is, in this case, they're hoping to sell parcels off to individual people. So once development occurs on the parcel, the records of survey may commence to delineate the parcel lines for individual ownership. In this case, there'll be one common area parcel, 3.65 acres for utilities, landscaping, easements. It also went before the Water Conveyance Advisory Committee. They received approval. They also, there were no issues, so the Water Conveyance Advisory Committee did not have any issues with the item. And that meeting was on October 4th. The staff report is part of the packet. All the findings have been met for the project, and they begin on packet page, I believe, 76. I'm sorry, the proposed subdivision map was on 76. The findings begin on packet page 63. The project has also been conditioned for the records of survey, if they do decide to do records of survey in the future, for staff to review those records of survey, and that is condition C2. Typically, with a record of survey, it does not come before staff, but we are proposing a condition for that. I don't believe the applicant has any issues with that. So more of the findings. In conclusion, based on the ability to make the findings and subject to the recommended conditions of approval, staff recommends approval of Land Division Application DP 210225, a tentative commercial subdivision map to subdivide a 6.73 acre parcel into 20 parcels ranging in size from 0.10 acres to 3.65 acres. And here's the recommendation for you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Lucille. Unless there are quick questions for Lucille right now, I think it probably would be good to move to the applicant, and then we can ask questions after that, and then move to public comment. So, Mr. Scott, are you here? If you can step up to the microphone and state your name for the record when you speak, so we can help the clerk's office when they transcribe the minutes. But please feel free to go forward with presentation or comments that you'd like to make, and then we'll have questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, and Lucille, thank you, and the staff. I'm Bruce Scott with Resource Concepts, here today on behalf of this project, which is on property, as noted, owned by Park Ranch Holdings. We're actually working very closely with Mike Gilbert, who will be acquiring the property from David Park as this proceeds to development. I apologize to the staff for any confusion that we may have created with regard to the commercial subdivision guidelines, which, as Lucille pointed out, could be a single basically outline of the property without any lots being shown, which is technically within the statutory the statutory framework for a commercial subdivision, because many times you don't know what's going to happen there. In our case, the staff suggested, and we thought it was a good idea, to have a whole lot more detail in terms of how we might want to do it, because it really helps you with your utilities and your layout and making sure you meet all the guidelines that are required under the code. So we have done that, and we will work with staff to create a viable, usable method of actually making these lots into approved individual parcels. At this point, we're anticipating that we will pursue a site improvement permit to do the grading, utilities, paving, and create the lot pads, and then probably at that time actually do potentially a map that creates formally the 19 individual lots, leaving the common area as the 20th parcel. It's a fairly straightforward project. I'm happy to answer questions. We have gone to water conveyance. We've gone to the Allerman Upper New Virginia Ditch Company, coordinated with the town of Minden, MGSD, and I think we have everyone focused, and we have all their comments, and we're certainly happy to work with the staff and implement the project based on or subject to their comments. So with that, I would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. If you could just stay at the microphone, then we'll
Sure.
direct questions either to the staff or to you at this point. So, members of the Planning Commission, Christy, again, I can't always see you on the screen, so if you have a question or a comment, just jump in and follow on with anybody else who's asking questions or making comments. Maureen, would you like to start?
Hi.
Hi.
Question. These will be simply storage units. They will not have offices above, correct?
That's correct.
And how many water connections will you require for this project?
What we're going to do is have a master connection. So it'll be a single connection, kind of like a mobile home park, where there'll be a single connection to the town of Minden. And then we will have a water distribution system in the facility. And each of the units, with the exception of the ones in the back that are smaller, that are on a single parcel, each of the individual larger parcels will have a water connection and a sewer connection, as well as power.
If they are simply storage, why would they have a sewer connection? I'm just curious.
Well, they're not simply storage. They would have an office in them in the corner with probably basically a bathroom. The idea is to have something where somebody could bring their motorhome and actually stay there during the day while they worked on the motorhome, or they had a place to clean up or a place to have a bathroom in the facility itself. But they are restricted, and they would be further restricted by CC&Rs that would prohibit the kinds of uses that have been an issue in other similar facilities in other areas, also in Douglas County. But we want to make sure that the ability is there to have basically a bathroom and a shower probably, but not to have a place to stay. They're not designed for overnight, and that's not an approved element of what's being requested. They're not going to be allowed to run businesses out of there in the way that some have, where people will operate out of a storage unit. It's designed to be more of an upscale purchase property with restrictions so that people could have a place to take an expensive motorhome or trailer and have it be able to keep it inside and have some work potentially being able to be done on it, but it's not a place to stay or a place for overnight.
Okay, for Lucille, is this something that we need to place a condition on?
It's hard. I would say what you're approving today is the land division. So we're not looking at design review yet. That's something that staff would look at when it came forward for design review for the storage units. What he's speaking about, there's sort of a gray area there, so we would have to look at what they're asking for when the design review comes in. We're not, as far as offices are concerned, storage does not allow that. Businesses are not allowed to be run out of it, so we would have to review that. I don't know about putting a condition on that. I'm going to look to Sam if he thinks an additional condition is something appropriate at this time or not.
Sam Booth or Sam Taylor, would you like to weigh in, please? Musical microphones here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sam Booth, Deputy Director of Community Development, for the record. Would agree with Lucille. Maureen, what the Planning Commission's considering today is just the land division to create the lots in the subdivision map here. I think Mr. Scott described well the intentions of the proposed business. Staff has had a pre-application meeting with Mr. Gilbert and Bruce and his team. I believe David Park was on that pre-application meeting as well. And we discussed the proposed business model and what they're suggesting here. As Lucille described, we have some kinks that we'd like to work out, possible conditions or CC&Rs, as Bruce mentioned, that may be applied. But that would be reviewed with the design review application when that comes forward. Generally, mini storage or storage units permitted with a design review in the light industrial zoning district, and I think that's the avenue that the applicants are looking at. But within that, residential is not permitted, single-family residential or multifamily in the light industrial zoning. So we just want to be very careful there with the sewer and water connections and some of those things. But staff will review that as we move forward.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it's on the record that it's something that we're going to be looking at, because we don't want, and I appreciate your honesty and openness to work on it with staff, because we do not want to have something like other projects that we have seen in the county.
We've had extensive discussion with staff. There will be a homeowners association associated with this, and there will be CC&Rs. And I think at that point, we will hopefully be able to work out some language that is comfortable for staff, that provides addresses the kind of concerns that may have occurred in other places that are not intended or desired here.
Okay, one last comment. And this, again, this is not for the Planning Commission, but this is just something I want to bring forward to keep in mind. It's more of a paperwork thing. The agreement for the access to the property between the town of Minden and for the driveway is between the town of Minden and Edgewood Companies, which was a part of Park at one time. That's paperwork that's going to have to be cleaned up, and I assume that Park Cattle Company is on top of that, but I just want to make sure that you are aware of that, and that's going to be taken care of at some time. I don't want it to come back and bite us.
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by cleaned up. We certainly are aware of that.
All right, it just says it's with Edgewood Companies, and you said this was with Park Cattle Company.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, there will. Years ago, when the town of Minden wanted to develop their facility, they came to the Edgewood Companies at that time. It was Park, but it was under a different name. And there is an agreement, which I think you have a copy of there, that allows that. And so there will need to be some adjustments, and there's going to require, there's a payment required to help offset some of the costs that the town of Minden incurred when they built their driveway. For a portion of this driveway, the common area benefits. And so I guess to answer your question, yes, there is some cleanup that needs to be done. I honestly don't know if the grantor or the grantee on the easement needs to change, but certainly whatever legal requirements need to be met will be met with regard to that ownership.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I know it's not a planning commission issue. I've been married to a lawyer for 50 years, and these are the little things that pop up in my line of
Yeah,
sight.
it's probably better than being married to an engineer.
Probably, since I'm not a linear thinker. Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Maureen. Very good questions. Other questions, Brian?
So kind of piggybacking off the parking lot and the driveway, we're talking about big trailers coming in and out. I mean, I can't quite tell. Is this parking lot accessed off Buckeye? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So the in and out's going to be a left and right directly next to the intersection of Mueller and Buckeye.
It is at the existing town of Minden access now. It'll use the same approach. There won't be any change at Buckeye itself.
Well, so, maybe this is for Sam or you guys. Do we have to talk to NDOT at all about, any of that? If we're changing this to 2 accesses to 2 properties from that being right next to the Mueller Parkway? I mean, I see an RV turning right there and going into an intersection of crap tons of cars.
Lucille Rayo, for the record. Our engineering staff has reviewed this. I believe Jeremy is on Zoom if he wants to speak to that. But they're accessing it. They're not accessing off of Mueller. They're accessing off of the driveway from.
But you can see how close that driveway is to that intersection. I mean, it's right next to it.
So with the design review, that access and what you're speaking to would be reviewed. Yes.
Okay. And so the Mueller that's drawn here is kind of just estimated. So, I mean, it's not exact. So just looking at it, it looks like, we've got, pretty tough access there. And I mean, I understand it's through an existing driveway and that's already got NDOT approval, I would believe. But the addition of Mueller there, I think we got to carefully look at that because, I mean, that's potential for, just bad ins and outs for RVs and cars going down Buckeye.
Yeah, I think one of the things that doesn't show up very well is the fact that you've got the Upper New Virginia ditch there that will provide additional separation from any physical improvements of Mueller Parkway. And it is an existing driveway, and of course the town of Minden brings trucks in that are about as big as any RVs would be. So the actual functionality of it, I think, is pretty well established. It's just, it doesn't read clearly when you look at a piece of paper.
Yeah, the drawing was kind of small in any respect. I couldn't really get a good idea where it was going. So, but thank you for clarifying.
Certainly.
Thank you, Brian. Nick, any questions or observations at this point?
Yeah, a couple of questions on Brian's point there. What is the anticipated intersection between Buckeye Road and Mueller? Is this going to be a roundabout? I mean, because it just doesn't seem to be enough room to do a roundabout there, intersecting with Mueller and Buckeye Road to allow this access to be feasible.
For the record, Lucille Rayo, the access, as I described to Brian, is not off of Mueller. It's from Buckeye. There's an existing driveway. I'm sorry that I have no way of zooming in.
I understand that, but I'm looking at the engineering drawing here. Pull up the engineering drawing. That one right there. Pull that up and highlight and enlarge that so we can look at the access. Okay, so you see Mueller coming into this road. If there's a roundabout there, I mean, that access doesn't work.
Well, you have a ditch there between the access and Mueller itself. And I think that as part of the preliminary Mueller Parkway right-of-way work, they actually did look at that intersection, as I understand it. And I think it's been determined that there's enough width there to make it workable without a major conflict with respect to the existing driveway, which of course we would be tying into.
Yeah, I don't see it. I just don't see it. I
Excuse me.
just don't understand what kind of intersection you're going to put there between Mueller and Buckeye that's going to allow that access to work.
Excuse me, Nick and Mr. Scott. I think Sam Taylor might have something to add, and I'm not sure if Jeremy's on the line and wants to comment further. I know Mueller Parkway is fairly far down the road, and we're still obviously dealing with 2 lanes versus 4 lanes. And I think you make a very good point, Nick. We want to make sure that the driveway doesn't feed right into Parkway traffic. But go ahead, Sam Booth, and then if Jeremy wanted to weigh in, we'll get the staff's comments on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sam Booth for the record. Nick and Brian, appreciate your points. I think to the applicant's first point, because they're accessing the existing driveway that the town of Minden uses for their facility, that access, that curb cut onto Buckeye is already existing. So we can't require an existing access to be moved unless the county is to discuss that with the 2 property owners. So they're not, the good news there is they're not proposing a new access onto Buckeye. It's an existing access that's there today. And then as far as Mueller Parkway to the west, it is very close there. It is on the other side of the ditch. And in what you're seeing there is the drawing for the entire width of Mueller Parkway. When that right-of-way was requested, at minimum, it's a 205 foot wide width, which is not all needed for the width of Mueller Parkway itself. On the east side of Mueller Parkway, I believe there's a 100-foot buffer that the director, Dallaire, had included in the design. I do believe there's a roundabout planned for Buckeye and Mueller Parkway at this area here. And hopefully if Jeremy's here, he can speak to the design to that. But these are things that the county engineering team would be taking into account when we're designing that roundabout for Mueller Parkway. And my guess is, the roundabout's going to be pushed as far west within that right-of-way as we can to stay away from not just the driveway access, but really the drainage ditch that's there as well.
Thank you, Sam. Jeremy, are you on the call? And would you have anything else to add, or we'll bring it back to Nick for any other follow-ups?
Yeah, I am on the call. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead if you've got additional comments.
Yeah, Jeremy Hutchings for the record, county engineer. No, I think Sam nailed it. That is proposed to be a roundabout and that right away is wide enough. It'd be pushed kind of, I guess it's westerly in this view that we'll see still showing. So it's going to be designed to avoid the town's existing entrance as a roundabout with Mueller and Buckeye in the future. But we are just in the preliminary stages of that design. But Sam nailed it beyond that. That's all.
Thank you, Jeremy. Nick, I'll go back to you with follow-ups or other questions.
So what I'm hearing is you can move that roundabout to the west if needed. Is there any land restriction that prevents you from doing that?
Yeah. There's right-of-way restriction. So you can kind of see where the right-of-way today is flaring out a little bit on the western side. But as Sam had mentioned, part of that right-of-way width as you go north and south is to route some flooding and whatnot. So some of it's the road, some of it's not the road. But the improved road is to the west, and that's constrained by existing right-of-way, as you can just make out in that view of Seal House.
I'm having difficulty hearing him.
Jeremy, can you repeat your last 2 or 3 sentences dealing with the right-of-way and how it would be pushed to the west? I think that's what you were saying, but give a little louder maybe, because it is a little difficult to hear.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll try to turn off any video here. But yeah, the restriction is the existing right-of-way that the county currently has.
So maybe you can rephrase it. I think what you were saying is the existing right-of-way goes further to the west, and any roundabout would be likely to be located on that part of the drawing there. And then we've also got the 100-foot buffer, which is the Virginia ditch to the east. Am I saying that? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but am I giving you a fair summary of what you were trying to convey?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Nick. Sam Taylor?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Sam Taylor from the Douglas County DAs. I would just like to point out that the burden isn't on the applicant to show how the roundabout does, or how the Mueller Parkway does not interfere with their opening. Rather, the duty is on Douglas County to design the roundabout in such a way that it doesn't interfere with the existing opening for the town of Minden and also for this particular proposed subdivision. So it's up to the county to make sure that we can build a roundabout, not the other way around.
Thank you, Sam. I think, Nick, you're making very good points. We want, regardless of whose responsibility is, we want it to be safe. We want it to be the traffic to flow smoothly and not to cause some unintended problem 5 years or 10 years or 20 years down the road that they're going to come back and blame the Planning Commission on. Brian, go ahead.
So maybe Sam can answer. So we've got 20 lots here. I guess one is not inhabited. It's more of the HOA. In a residential subdivision, at what number do we have to have 2 entrances and exits? And are we creating a problem by having this many possibilities coming out of a single driveway to go over what we would require in a residential? And is it obviously different for commercial would be the follow-up?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian. You are remembering quite a few conversations we've had in subdivision designs that have come before the Planning Commission recently. The number is 20 lots. However, the design standards in the code say 20 residential lots require that secondary access. So these first point is that they're not residential lots. The design has been submitted to the fire department. Amy Ray of East Fork Fire has reviewed the design. I'd defer to Lucille if you got any comments from Amy about secondary access, but I know that she's pretty astute at reviewing site plans for that.
So speaking to that, yes, the fire department was part of our pre-application for this. I'm not sure, I did not receive comments from her on the land division map, but we certainly will be working closely with her with regards to the design review. And then, of course, with the building permits, when they start construction, they have to be signed off by the fire department. So if there's any issues at that time. But she was okay with the design. This design was proposed to the fire department in the pre-application meeting, and they were okay with not having the second access.
Yeah, okay, that's good. I mean, as long as the fire department's reviewed, just because I get concerned of 19 RVs plus Minden trying to empty their trash trucks in the event of a fire and all trying to go out one exit onto Mueller and Buckeye. Well, Buckeye, then Mueller.
Thank you, Brian. Did the applicant have additional comments? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple things. The fire department's concerns in a commercial situation like this with regard to second access typically are the total square footage of the buildings involved. And we have worked to be below that threshold as well as the 20 unit threshold that applies to subdivisions. The other thing I would point out is if you think about a typical storage area, the number of trips per day is substantially less than it would be for a subdivision, which typically would be 10 trips a day for an individual subdivision lot. So although, there are questions that have been raised, I think the actual impact of traffic, even with 30 or 40 foot motorhomes or trailers, is going to be relatively modest and certainly probably at least equal to or less than what the town of Minden's access is with regard to their operations as far as larger vehicles are concerned. So I think it'll be a relatively benign addition, if you will, I understand the concern, and if for some reason everybody were trying to get out at once, you could have, a concern.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. Christy, did you have any questions or comments that you wanted to make at this point?
I do not have any at this time.
Okay. I don't have any other questions either, but Nick, we'll go back to you and then we'll move to public comment. Nick?
A question for the applicant. Are these all going to be built at the same time?
The intention is to try to build them basically at the same time. It may be like 2 or 3 groups of 5 to 10, but the idea is to come in for a site improvement permit before any final mapping is concerned. Get the improvements in, the driveways, the paving, all the utilities, and create the pads, and then potentially develop anywhere from maybe 5 to 10 pads at a time. So I'm guessing the improvements themselves, except for the buildings, would happen at one time, and the buildings would happen probably in 2 or 3 groups, but fairly quickly. It's not going to be sell a lot and, like a custom home type of thing, bring a unit or design your unit. It's going to be pre-designed and pre-constructed.
And are they all going to meet the same design criteria in terms of look and feel?
Yeah, the idea is to have a good looking, they're going to be metal buildings, but they'll be dressed up and there'll be landscaping, and the idea is people are buying these, so there's an interest in having something that looks like it was designed, with aesthetics in mind.
Okay, and to community development, is there some type of design criteria that's required of the applicant?
There are certain standards within county code for the structure, correct?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Nick. If there's no other questions on the Planning Commission now, then I think we can move to public comment.
Thank you.
If you can stand by, we have further questions when we deliberate or consider a motion, but thank you very much, Mr. Scott. We'll open this for public comment. Again, step up to the microphone, sign in, state your name if you do have public comment. If there are no people moving forward for public comment, then I'll close public comment at this point, and we'll come back to the Planning Commission. This would be the appropriate time then to deliberate on possible motions. Lucille has a recommended motion there. If you would like to use that one, the motion I think is basically the same, a little bit elongated there on packet page 54. But now is the time for motion or discussion on the proposed tentative commercial subdivision map. Again, I would point out, as Lucille pointed out in the past, the findings that are required to be met begin on packet page 59. There's 8 findings numbered 1 through 8. So if you do have concerns about whether this project meets one of those findings, when we come to the voting process, we would be advised that people would point out the particular finding that you have concerns with. And again, Lucille did not get into all of the conditions, but for the record, those begin on page 60 of the Planning Commission packet, and I think I counted them up. There are 31 conditions at this point, and there was also conditions imposed by the Water Advisory Committee. Just as on a lighter note, my favorite condition on this one is B3I on packet page 62. No rock shall be placed within the public right-of-way maintained by Douglas County. I think that's an important one. But you've conditioned this well, Jeremy and Lucille and Sam Booth and Sam Taylor. So I don't have any concerns at this point. Other concerns, observations, or if people are prepared to make a motion, we'll entertain a motion. Nick or Maureen?
Yeah, this is just a general comment about development. And the more hardscape we have and the more metal we put in our valley, the more the ambient temperatures are going to continue to rise. And our mornings won't be quite so cool, and our evenings will be taking longer to cool off, and that's just a general comment that I want to make. I don't want to turn into another Maricopa County that takes until midnight to cool off to 90 degrees. And I fear that's what's going to happen to our county as we keep putting more metal and more asphalt down. But that's just a general comment.
Thank you, Maureen. Nick?
I'll make a motion. We recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners of Land Division application DP 210225 based on the ability to make the required findings as outlined in the staff report and subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
Thank you, Nick. Nick has recommended approval of the Land Division application. Is there a second?
Brian Owen seconds.
Brian seconds the motion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approval of the Land Division application say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Hearing no nays, then the motion is approved 5-0. Thank you very much, Lucille. We appreciate your good work on this project. We'll now move forward to the next agenda item. This is agenda item 2, beginning on packet page 87. This is for possible action. Discussion on a zoning map amendment from LI, light industrial, to GI, general industrial, and a special use permit to allow a 26,200 square foot industrial recycling facility located approximately 250 feet southwest of the intersection of Airport Road and Hayborn Road within the Airport Community Plan. The subject parcel is approximately 9 acres in size. The property owner is SJR LLC. APN 1320-08-401-004. Development applications DP 21-0221 and DP 21-0222. And before the staff begins, I do want to call everyone's attention that, as it says in the packet, there are 2 recommended motions, as we have 2 parts to this. So we have a zoning map amendment, and then we have a special use permit. So I think, Lorenzo, you can run through the discussion of both of these items, but then when we get to the actual deliberations, I think it'd be advisable if we take a discussion and deliberations on the first issue, item number 1, which would be the zoning map amendment. And then when we conclude action on that, then we can deliberate on the special use permit. But I think for efficiency's sake, Lorenzo, please go ahead and describe the entire process, and then we'll hear from the applicant and move forward. So please go ahead, Lorenzo.
Thank you, Chairman. Lorenzo Mastino, Douglas County Planning, for the record. Please note, before I begin, that comments were received after posting of the agenda. They're available to everyone in the supplemental documentation to the packet. And I'd also like to disclose that some correspondence between the applicant and representatives from DDI has been made part of the supplemental as well, and that's available. I would begin giving some background on this project. This project is comprised, the site is comprised of approximately 9 acres located southwest of the intersection of Airport Road and Hayborn Road, east of the Minden-Tahoe Airport grounds, from which is separated by Hayborn Road and surrounded on most sides by an area zoned as light industrial, LI. One property which is directly north of the site is zoned general industrial, GI, and developed as a propane products distributor. West of the property is the Meridian Business Park, and the site is located within the Airport Community Plan, which is described in the Master Plan Vision Statement as follows. The Airport Community Plan will focus on creating a state-of-the-art transportation hub while continuing to be recognized as a premier soaring destination. The airport community will become a logistics center for commerce, offering a convenient location for industrial and agricultural uses. This proposal is to establish and operate a 26,000 square foot industrial recycling facility. To do so, this request seeks to first amend the Douglas County zoning map to rezone the property from light industrial to general industrial. After that, the project seeks the approval of a special use permit to allow the industrial recycling facility use, which staff considers equivalent to a general industrial use as per Title 20 land use table. And I want to stop here a second to make a brief comment that in our code, Title 20, we have a general industrial zoning district and a general industrial use, which is in the table. So in this case, we're trying to match the general industrial zoning district with the general industrial use, which is allowed with the approval of a special use permit. This general industrial use is defined as any intense manufacturing operation or industrial use, including but not limited to batch plants, foundries, tank farms, refineries, junkyards, or auto dismantling, which is not specifically listed anywhere in this code. This use shall provide proof of having obtained and of having maintained as many as may be periodically requested by the county, all applicable local, state, and federal permits. One thing I want to mention here is that although some other uses that are not going to be part of this application for this specific applicant are listed here in the description, each one of those would have to get an additional special use permit where in the future, 50 years from now, one wants to operate one of those other uses that are listed in the definition. And that is not part of this application. The zoning map amendment requires the Planning Commission to review and recommend a decision to the Board of County Commissioners, which decides on the request as the final decision maker. The special use permit, instead, is reviewed by the Planning Commission as the final decision maker today, unless appealed. What we have in front of you today is the zoning map amendment and the special use permit. However, for the project to be completed and the business to be operating, the applicant is in the process of finalizing the architectural and site design, and will need to submit complete design review and water conveyance advisory committee applications to Douglas County prior to complete the entitlements process and prior to go to permitting. Conditions related to the physical build-out of the facility will be placed on the project at the design review stage when more detailed information will be provided to staff. This is a vicinity map of the area. You can see pointed at with an arrow and outlined in light blue the site for this proposal, and as well as some of the vacant parcels or occupied parcels nearby. This is a map of the current land use. So this is the master plan land use. The project location is outlined with an arrow again. It's within an industrial area. And industrial land use allows for general industrial or light industrial or service industrial zoning to be layered upon it. This is a copy of the zoning map. On the left side, you have the current zoning, and you can see that most of the parcels around this one are zoned light industrial. Just to the north of it, you can see that little darker gray spot that is the general industrial parcel that is already zoned as such. And on the right side of your screen, you can see the proposed zoning map, how it would look like after a possible approval of this item with the property for the project rezoned to general industrial. There are 4 findings that have to be met in order for this body to recommend approval and the Board of County Commissioners to approve the zoning map amendment. The findings can be found at Title 20.610.050. And this is a I'm gonna read the findings. If you want the full detailed reasoning behind staff's review is on the packet, pages 94 to 95. But the four are A, that the proposed amendment is consistent with the policies embodied in the adopted master plan, and that the underlying land use designation contained in the land use plan. B, that the proposed amendment will not be inconsistent with the adequate public facilities policies contained in its title. C, that the proposed amendment is compatible with the actual and master plan use of the adjacent properties. And D, if the amendment is in a receiving area and changes land to any industrial, commercial, or residential district, or otherwise increases the density or intensity of use, that the amendment is being requested in the context of a specific plan or plan development and utilizes transfers of development rights. Just to be clear, this deed does not apply in our case because it's not within a receiving area. Now, those are instead the 8 findings that when considering applications for the special use permit, the commission or board must evaluate. The description of these, the full descriptions, is in packet pages 95 and 96. But the summary of them is that the proposed use has to be consistent with the policies embodied in the adopted master plan and zoning district. Then finding B would be the compatibility with the character and integrity of adjacent development. There are some traffic compatibility findings. At D, that development impact cannot be excessive. E, the project needs to incorporate features to minimize the negative impacts of the use itself. F, not to be located within archaeological or cultural area. G, that the use complies with all other applicable Douglas County standards. And finally, that the use will not be detrimental to public health, safety, convenience, and welfare, especially as it relates to the neighboring properties. I want to mention how staff worked at drafting conditions for the special use permit. Because this use, again, is a general industrial use, what we did was actually looking at conditions and use permit requirements that are best practices just across the state, looked at other codes and zoning codes because we did not have specific ones for this. So some of the things that we thought were going to be making the project better and ultimately mitigating some of the noxious impacts related with a facility of this kind are those that you see on the slide. Again, the full description is at page 97, but we make sure that there are some conditions in there to, for example, screen at condition A2, screen materials that are being stored from the public using a mix of hardscape and landscaping. Conditions A3, processing of materials which is going to result in excessive dust, fumes, or smokes has to be conducted within enclosed structures. And those are all things that we're calling, it's called in planning practice performance zoning. So we're not looking just at yes or no for a use, but we're trying to make the project better, working on just specific outcomes, such as in this case, fumes or smoke. Condition A6 is that the applicant also needs to maintain all applicable federal, state, and local licenses and abide by federal, state, and local regulations, which are on top of the Title 20 regulations for the business that they're trying to create and operate. At this point, I do want to remind everyone that the zoning map amendment is the DP 21-0221, and that is one application that is being considered by this board today. And staff believes that the findings may be made in the affirmative for the requested amendment, and staff recommends approval of this request. For the special use permit, that's DP 21-0222. Once again, staff believes that the findings may be made in the affirmative for the special use permit, and staff recommends approval of the request, subject to the conditions that you can read in the full packet. One thing I do want to point out is that if zoning map amendment DP 21-0221 is denied, the special use permit shall be denied for inconsistency with the special use permit requirements, because that use wouldn't be allowed in a light industrial zoning, which is what they have today on the property. I believe that the applicant or representative is present. Or chairman, if you would like to entertain any other discussion prior to that.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. We appreciate your preparation and presentation today. I believe the applicant is AS Metals, and they're the interested party. If you want to come forward again, state your name, and we will hear your presentation, and then we'll commence with questions for staff or the applicant.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Vice Chairman and Commissioners and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Stan Silva. I'm the president of ANS Metals, also the owner of SJR LLC of the property. We're here to assist and help Douglas County to beautify recycling. I know it's an ugly word, but and it can be a good word. But we're really working with the community, Douglas Disposal as well, to make sure that we don't infringe on any of their infringement of Douglas County, and to bring in more jobs and bring in our 52 years of working in the California-based area. Our company is family owned and operated, and we have 8 locations in the California region, and we employ over 170 people, and we look forward to bringing some of our operations to Minden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Silva. If you can stay there at the microphone, and we'll come back to members of the Planning Commission for questions that they have of staff or the applicant. And again, Christy, I can't see you. We got a screen of maps up there, so please feel free at any point to ask questions or make comments. Nick, go ahead.
Number one, I'm not clear exactly what we're recycling here.
I'm sorry, we're recycling scrap metal, and we're looking at processing material inside of a building to have all the scrap metal recycling done inside of a building. So
okay, so where does the scrap metal come from?
We want to provide services to industrial areas around here and assist companies into having portable equipment going out and cleaning up locations and processing the material and shipping it out.
So can you give me an example of a company or here in the Valley that is going to be a customer of yours?
A lot of agricultural, and in all of our areas, we work in the agricultural communities, and we do we provide roll-off services, and not just roll-off services. What we do is we go out and, per se, you have a ranch cleanup that you have a whole bunch of scrap metal you want to get rid of. We go out and do the work for you and load up the material, haul it back off, and then process it and then ship it.
Okay, so would you say that 50% of your business is going to be recycling from farms and agricultural facilities?
Yeah, we don't want to be open to the public. We don't want to deal with public recyclables. That would be up to Douglas County or Douglas Disposal as well.
Now, what about sheetrock or construction materials like concrete or any of that stuff?
No, concrete, yes. The concrete debris, only straight concrete, asphalt would be something.
You'll do asphalt?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is there enough business here for that? I mean, you've obviously done your homework in terms of your business plan, but are you going to be bringing in materials from California?
Yes, sir.
You will?
Yes, we'd like to process some of our material from our California regions that we can assist some of the mills that are in the Reno area, such as stainless and aluminums.
So you'll be taking material from Reno?
No,
No.
not necessarily.
No.
We do we would bring our materials, some materials from our California regions here to just kind of use the trucking as loaded both ways in a sense, and use this as a processing area as well as enhancing some of the.
So you would bring materials here from California, process the materials, and then ship them back to California?
Some will be shipped back to California. Some will be shipped into different regions such as Plymouth, Utah, as well as Reno area and different areas where we can conduct business with different foundries and mills.
So are the metals actually recycled then?
I'm sorry?
Are the metals actually recycled then?
Yes, sir.
So they're going to be going from your facility. You're not actually doing the recycling. Are you doing the dismantling of the materials and then putting them into a situation where they're going to go to a foundry,
Yeah,
be
you do.
melted down, and then recycled there?
Yes, sir. What we do is the separation, the gathering and separation.
Okay. How about plastics?
The plastics are something that would be determined through Douglas disposal of what we can what we can handle and process.
Okay, so Douglas Disposal handles a lot of different recycling.
Yes.
All kinds of plastics, newspaper, magazines, aluminum, cardboard. Are you going to be doing any of that?
Only on assistance with Douglas disposal.
So in agreement with them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many trucks a day will be coming in and out of your facility?
As the start of it for, we assume that there'll be between 8 and 10 trucks per day. Most of it will be work outside and then brought in.
And are these semi
Yes,
type?
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So no general construction materials. No sheetrock. No, that's not. Okay.
We want to minimize our dust.
Okay.
Thank you, Nick. Members of the Planning Commission, additional questions? I do want to make sure that the record is clear. You touched on some of these points, Mr. Silva, but Lorenzo has got some emails that have been distributed to the Planning Commission members and will be added in supplemental materials in their emails between Jess Anthony, who I believe works for you, Mr. Silva.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes. And John Marchini of South Tahoe Refuse is the email, but they're on behalf of Douglas Disposal. And it also includes General Manager Jeff Tillman. And if I can read just some of the relevant portions of that into the record so we're clear. Mr. Marchini is responding to you, Mr. Silva, and Mr. Anthony of your company, saying Douglas Disposal would be happy to provide a letter in support of your project. You intend to process materials that you intended to process to your facility, so we can assure those services and processing operations do not violate the terms of our exclusive franchise agreement with Douglas County. And this is from Mr. Marchini and references Mr. Tillman, the general manager. So I do think it's important that you continue the lines of communication with Douglas Disposal and make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And I think you've been very forthright in your comments here today. So I wanted to make sure that that was included as a part of the record.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Maureen.
Good afternoon, sir. On page 101 of our packet, it is from R.O. Anderson. It says batteries, radiators, and other items with the potential for leaking hazardous materials will be contained indoors, placed in a secondary container and covered. You will be storing those, recycling those, collecting those. What will you be doing with those materials?
All the above, ma'am. We will be collecting them, storing them to send out to processors. So, and it's Batteries, they're a recyclable item. We don't want them on the sides of the street and everything like that. So we're really very, very equipped with being in California and having our facilities definitely environmental friendly, especially the locations that we were at. And so all that would be stored inside in secondary containments and put together as a processed material that is shipped out and not stored in a long manner of time.
And that will be the same type of thing. You will get them from our area, or you will be bringing them over from California. And
that material, no, ma'am. We would be like batteries and radiators and stuff like that is usually received by cleanups where they might have old batteries laying on the ground and stuff. What we do is we want to process, we want to get those off the ground, and radiators from cars and stuff like that. So what we do is you get them in a package and ship them. And so that wouldn't be material that we'd be bringing from California. Our focus is to bring aluminums and stainless, that there's mills in the local area or in Reno area that could thrive on having extra material. And so the materials that would we be shipping back to California would be the radiators and batteries and so on, where the aluminums and stainlesses, there's markets east of the of the Sierras.
will you be doing any grinding of concrete or asphalt on site?
If that would be possible, we would be interested in doing that in a designated area. Yes.
If that is not allowed, will you be bringing it to the facility, loading it in trucks, or just loading it on site where you're collecting it and shipping it out?
Yes.
Because I'm still a little confused on what's going to be ending up at the plant at this facility. Because it says everything's going to be done inside, and it'll solely be separating. But if you're going to be having larger materials coming on site, that would just be the smaller materials like window frames and construction beams and scrap wood and those types of things.
No scrap wood, ma'am.
No scrap wood?
No,
just metals.
Metal and yes.
Okay, the other stuff you would collect and ship out right away.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And how much, this might be better for Lorenzo, how much water would be discharged from this facility? I know there'll be storm drain discharge to some extent just from rain and snow, but would there be discharge from the facility that would be other than what goes into the sewer system?
Lorenzo Mastino with Douglas County Planning, for the record. I would defer to Jeremy to address that kind of question on the drainage. When I know that when the design review is going to be coming in, we're going to be looking at a detailed drainage report. You do have in your packet some of the preliminary information, but nothing that should be excessive would be discharged in terms of altering the drainage of the site to a point that is not regulated by Title 20 or our improvement standards. Now, that is also something that the Water Conveyance Advisory Committee may possibly inquire and want more details, just to make sure that there is nothing that is going to affect the Hayborn ditch that is right there. You can see in the aerial, but not any differently than other projects.
I don't have any more questions for the applicant, but I do have some questions for staff. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Maureen. Jeremy, did you have anything to add to Lorenzo's comments in response to Maureen, or should we move on to a couple other things that I have and then public comment?
Nothing to add.
Okay.
Mr. Silva, was there anything that you wanted to interject at this point? I just have a couple of quick questions, and then we'll move to public comment unless Maureen wanted to follow up now.
No, I'm fine. Thank you very much. Thanks for your
Okay,
time.
thank you. Lorenzo, I noticed the appropriate noticing by sign and by the neighboring properties. Have we received any comments from the airport or any neighboring businesses in response to the noticing?
Chairman, no, we did reach out to the airport property privately, besides the standard notification that they did get because they're nearby. We did not get any comments back. And forgive me, did you ask if we had received any additional comments from just other residents? Yes. There were some questions regarding what is this facility going to be doing regarding noise or pollution during the processing. Some questions regarding traffic. Has traffic been considered? And well, the answer to that is that yes, they did submit a trip generation letter, which is what we usually require. And road maintenance questions about deterioration of the road due to additional traffic. And then instead, another resident did ask some questions regarding what would be the possible impact on nearby residences in the area. However, I do need to say that it's about 2 miles before reaching the closest residence for this operation because it's contained within an industrially zoned area. So there's not too much concern from that, from staff's viewpoint.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. And then could you tell me, we're changing this from light industrial to general industrial. The entire Meridian Business Park, I think, is the surrounding area, and that's all light industrial except for one property immediately to the north that has been rezoned for general industrial. Am I correct on that? And can you tell me what that property is, what they do? I believe that's the one to the north west of the proposed site.
Chairman Walter, Lorenzo Massino for your record again. Yes, you're correct. We are changing. The request is to change the zoning of the property from light industrial to general industrial. The parcel that is already zoned general industrial is the one where I'm moving my arrow. You probably cannot see it, but it's just to the north of the project site. That particular parcel is used as a propane or fuel storage and delivery. And I think this is a good time to add something else, I think, since you brought that up, Chairman. In the county, most of the industrial zoning that exists is actually light industrial. There are not many properties zoned general industrial just because when in 1996, and I did mention this in the staff report, parcels were zoned with the then updated zoning districts. It was decided to provide this light industrial zoning districts across the valley, which allows for less intense uses. And then various property owners decided to apply to change the zoning to general industrial to run specific businesses that usually had required a special use permit, such as this one, but also such as, for example, storage tanks and other things. So currently, we actually have only 5 general industrial zoned properties in the entire county, and all of them are actually about an acre or so. So we did not find any other suitable property, for example, that could accommodate this kind of facility, and that is the reason for asking for the zoning change in the first place.
Thank you, Lorenzo. I think you make a very good point. I think in this instance, the county has done a good job in setting forth good planning standards, which is take everything for light industrial to begin with, and that way it's going to be fairly inconsequential. And then if somebody does want to come in and do general industrial, something a little more intense or require a little bit more scrutiny, then they have to come to the Planning Commission, they have to come to the Board of County Commissioners for approval, and they have to go through the special use permit, which is another level of review that both we do and the staff does to make sure they're complying with all the appropriate standards, recommendations, design standards, safety standards, and everything else. So we take them to a higher level when they come to us for general industrial. So I think you have explained that very well. And again, I appreciate Mr. Silva being here and explaining what his facility would be doing and what he has done in California. So I don't have any additional questions at this point. Christy, I'd be happy to yield with you. I think Nick and Maureen all have things that they wanted to follow up on. And then after that, we'll move to public comment on this issue. So Nick or Maureen, would you like to go next? Nick?
Since this is in the airport community plan, did you reach out to the airport board on this project?
Commissioner Meyer, we did not reach out to the board specifically. We did through reaching out to the airport a couple of times. We're hoping that if the airport management had any issues, they would have, or concerns, they would have reached out to the board.
You know, we have a specific airport board that consists of not only management of the airport, but also members of the community and the business community. So I would feel a lot more comfortable about this project if you had gotten their feedback, and I would recommend that you do that. The other thing is, I'm concerned, you touched on that there were concerns from the neighboring properties. Can you specifically detail those and who those people were and what their concerns were?
Commissioner Meyer, again, Lorenzo Massino for the record. On your first comment, yes, we will reach out, as you're suggesting, to the board, the airport board, and see what we can do. Again, this project would have to go through several reviews and processes, so we'll make sure we'll do that. And
you're asking us to change zoning and issue a special permit. I'm suggesting that you get feedback from the airport board before we make that decision. So let's hear about the other neighbors.
Regarding the neighbors, actually, the comments that we received were comments not from the adjacent properties, but from other residents that did not declare to be property owners in the immediate area.
Did you reach out to people in the Meridian Light Industrial area?
They were notified as required.
They were notified, and no comments from them?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Nick. If I could follow up, Lorenzo. So basically what happens is when you put up the signs, the noticing signs, people will drive by as they are going through the area or to and from the airport or to and from one of the other properties in the light and zoning, and they may live 2 miles away, they may live 20 miles away. Your phone number is on there, your email is on there, so they call or email and say, hey, what's up with this project? I'd like to know a little bit more, and you either explain that to them in the form of a telephone conversation or email. Is that basically a summation of how you go through the process when you receive other comments?
Yes, sir, that is correct, Chairman. And also the agenda is posted on the public website, so anybody can see that and send comments in, and we always post that. So you will all be able to see who they were from and who commented what on the specific applications.
And you didn't receive any written formal comments that people would request to be provided for the record or for our consideration, is that correct?
They were made part of the supplemental if they were given to us in time.
These were Ms. Waller's comments that were included in the supplemental materials.
That's one of them, yes, correct.
Yeah, thank you. And Nick, I didn't mean to cut you off. If you weren't finished, please go ahead.
So do the adjacent properties get a formal letter from community development informing them of the project?
Yes, that is correct. As part
Okay.
of the applications, everyone gets notified within a radius.
Okay.
And that is usually how Title 20 intends to handle communication with the property owners that are entitled to know when a project of this kind is coming in.
I have one other question for the applicant. Are you going to be recycling automobiles on this site?
To answer your question, sir, if we do process any automobiles, it would all be indoors and they would be strictly just crushed and logged into process or logged into a prepared material that can go straight to a landfill. I mean, straight to a foundry or a shredder, such as.
Right. So you do anticipate getting crushed cars?
Yes, but
Okay.
it's not. It'll all be indoors.
Okay.
And to add to a little bit, we're going to have a 8-foot decorated concrete fence around the whole facility.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's also, public nuisance is minimal with that, because, I mean, the only transportation is when something like that is seen is it's when it's coming in, backed inside of a building, unloaded, processed. But
So
most
take me through the process about how you recycle a crushed car.
How we recycle a crushed car. Well, obviously, most of the stuff will be done away from the facility because of our portable equipment that we have.
Mm-hmm.
We have some of the state-of-the-art portable equipment that goes around baling. We do processing we just finished a job in Fallon, Nevada at the landfill there. But what we do is to bring a car in, obviously we have to take the gas out, make sure that there's no hazardous oil, gas, antifreeze, and we bale it into a big log per se, and it's loaded and shipped with other logged materials such as appliances and just regular sheet metal. So it's all of a material that goes to a shredder, and most likely in either the Bay Area, Oakland, or possibly Plymouth, Utah.
Okay, so it's kind of an intermediate process is what you're providing, right?
Yeah, we're not melting nothing down and creating any.
Right.
We're just trying to gather material, and when I say process in my terms, is get it transportation ready so we can benefit the weight laws, and maximize our shipping. We're in the trucking industry, we're in the demolition industry, we're in all sorts of different industries.
Right.
So we maximize our equipment.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Mr. Silva.
I have one more question for Mr. Silva. Do you use any water in your recycling process or the process that you anticipate at this facility?
No, sir.
No.
No.
Okay, so there's no water used. You're not using water for processing or?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Maureen, did you have other things that you wanted to follow up, or Brian?
Just a quickie, and this is probably for Jeremy. We talked previously on the Planning Commission and with engineering staff about reducing the number of parking spaces. I see in R.O. Anderson's report that they will have 8 to 12 employees on site on a regular basis, and I count about 30 spaces on site that we probably don't need for this facility. So I'm wondering if we could condition the project to, or at least make the recommendation for design review to reduce the number of parking spaces that are required to reduce the amount of asphalt that we need for this project.
Thanks for that question, Maureen. This is Jeremy Hutchings for the record. We did talk about updating the code, and I have actually been working on it with planning staff, but that's not been adopted. So in order to do less than the 10% we could approve at the staff level, they'd have to apply for a variance to that, even though I understand your intent, and I don't disagree, I agree with it. But that's just not in the code yet, so they'd still have to apply for a variance with the design review.
Jeremy, you were a little garbled there. Maureen, did you catch all of that, or should we repeat some of that for the record?
Well, my understanding is that we can have the parking spaces reduced, but since it's not in code, the applicant would have to apply for a variance to reduce the number of parking spaces. Jeremy, is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Jeremy. I think you're very forward-looking, Maureen, and I know Jeremy and Lorenzo and Tom Dallaire and Sam Booth are working on that, and we hope to maybe have some of those things before us in the next meeting or two for starting to revise Title 20 to update some of these things. And we do appreciate the applicant following what they're required to follow at this point. They often will ask for a variance, which we always consider, but that's just one extra step. If we don't have to do variances, we don't like to do variances. So thank you for the good question, Maureen. Brian, you had other questions?
Mine's really for Sam and Sam. Do we typically go and look to community plans to provide a yes or no on zoning map amendments? Because I can't remember ever hearing anything from the Johnson Lane Community Board.
Brian, this is Sam Booth from Community Development for the record. When staff's doing a review of a zoning map amendment, special use permit, even a design review at the staff level, we're looking at the Title 20, the development code. We're looking at the master plan for any suggestions, action items, goals, things like that. So I think Lorenzo's providing the airport community plan description just for information, so you guys have an idea of the, at least when the master plan was put together, the idea of the look and feel of the airport community plan. But the airport community plan, those are lines drawn by the Planning Commission and by the county commissioners in approving the master plan. That's separate from the airport advisory board to the airport. And so totally separate, jurisdiction and control there. First and foremost, when we review the community plans would be with a master plan amendment, whether or not to approve a change in the land use. As Lorenzo pointed out, the land use here is industrial. And I think that's why staff believes it's consistent with the master plan in that aspect as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because the land use to me is not changing. We have industrial, we're still industrial. Why we would seek any approval from an airport board, I don't see how the county is subservient to those boards. And so I just wanted to make sure that we know that the community plans are actually derived from our master plan that we've created in the land use zoning, from what I understand.
Thank you, Brian. I think Sam Taylor wanted to weigh in as well.
Yes, Taylor, Douglas County DA. I just wanted to point out that finding A for the zoning map amendment basically states that the proposed amendment is consistent with the policies embodied in the adopted master plan and the underlying land use designation contained in the land use plan. What you're essentially doing as Planning Commission members is making that determination. In other words, you don't have to reach out for the airport board to make that determination. The airport board is reached out to relative to the master plan. That's when the airport board comes into play. But once you have adopted the master plan and the board has finally adopted the master plan, all you're trying to do is ascertain whether or not the proposed development fits within that master plan. And that is what determination A stands for.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Brian. At this point, if we don't have any other questions of staff or the applicant, let's move to public comment on this agenda item. Again, public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. If you would come forward to the podium with the microphone, state your name, sign in, please, on the sign-in sheet, and then you can begin your public comment.
I would encourage members of the Planning Commission, if you haven't already done so.
Could you state your name, please?
My name is Roger Adam.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you. I would encourage all members of the Planning Commission to go on ansmetals.com and look at their website, including the photos of the big rigs and the facilities in 8 locations now in California, before you make your decision. I think it would be very enlightening if maybe you've already done that, all of you. When I did it, I thought it was very interesting. I also saw on the website that A&S Metals is not just a scrap metal recycler, but they're also a demolition contractor. At least that's my reading, looking at their website, and they have California license 761104, according to their website. I don't see what would prevent them from demolishing buildings and taking the materials and processing here in Nevada. That might be a good question for Mr. Silva. Anyway, I would encourage you to not, I think it's a huge change going from light industrial to general industrial. And the fact that there are only 5 in the whole county, if I understand what was discussed earlier, I think this is a pretty big change and a very intense use that does not fit the general character of our county. And I encourage you to vote no on it. Have you considered the adverse impact of traffic, county road maintenance, noise pollution, air pollution, ambient temperature change, and residential property values and the groundwater? Wouldn't environmental impact, wildlife impact, and other studies not mandatory in Nevada or in Douglas be required for A&S Metals to open another California facility? In other words, if they went to a 9th facility in a town in California that they don't currently operate out of, wouldn't those type of studies be required by the state of California? That's my understanding anyway. So why should we allow California firms to construct Nevada facilities that do not meet environmental and wildlife standards in California? And if we do, what does that mean for the future? Also, doesn't concrete from demolition sites on older structures often contain dangerous amounts of extremely toxic asbestos? What is to prevent A&S Metals from transporting asbestos-laden concrete and its big rigs from California to Nevada? My understanding, what I heard, was that their intent is to transport some materials from California to Nevada. My opinion is this proposal makes about as much sense as allowing Douglas County roads, Jacks Valley Road, Johnson Lane, Airport Lane to be used by huge gravel trucks to and from a quarry on Indian
If you
land.
could wrap up with your last sentence or two, your time.
Yes, that was it.
Thank you very much, Roger.
Thank you.
Is there additional public comment?
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Tillman. I'm with Douglas Disposal, South Tower Refuse Company. I just wanted to share that the applicant reached out to us several months ago about this project and tried to see how, it would work in the county and whether or not it would be in violation of any of our franchise agreements. So we've had conversations, and I'm confident going forward that if there are any issues with our franchise agreement and their operation, that we can certainly work it out. Just wanted to share, they showed me a lot of character by coming to us ahead of time and talking to us about what they plan to do and what they want to do. And I do also believe that an operation like this can benefit this county, because a lot of this waste right now is just going into a landfill and it's not being taken care of in the proper manner. I think it could also be a benefit for our operation in South Tahoe, because we need to have an area to bring some of this. So I just want to say I'm in favor of it. I believe this is the right company to do it. And I think we can work with them. That's all I have there.
Thank you very much. Is there additional public comment? Seeing no additional public comment, we'll close public comment on this agenda item and we'll come back to members of the Planning Commission. It would now be appropriate for additional follow-up questions that people want to ask of staff or the applicant. We can then move forward. As I said in the introduction to this agenda item, we have 2 items to consider, and I would propose that we would have motions and discussion if needed on each of those, the zoning map amendment and the special use permit. The findings are on page 4 for the zoning and map amendment, but if people do have additional questions that they feel necessary to ask, I think now is the appropriate time. And again, Christy, if you had questions or comments you wanted to interject, please go ahead. Maureen, are you interested in making comments or asking questions at this point?
I have a couple of questions. Lorenzo, you said earlier that they will be subject to state and federal regulations and permits. Is that NDEP and EPA, or what were you speaking of?
Vice Chairwoman Lorenzo Massino, for the record, yes, it would be NDEP regulations, state regulations, other regulations that are mandated by the federal government, and yes, environmental protection. I cannot speak to those regulations in the full extent because that is not really my expertise. But yes, with that condition, what we're trying to do is to make sure that although our codes might not go into the detail of, for example, you need to treat this this material this way, we do know that there are other state and federal regulations regarding those processes, and they will need to abide by that. And we're saying that it's not going to be Douglas County's fault if they do not.
Okay, and with regards to the SUP, can we make comments now, or would it be more appropriate later? All right, I was wondering if we could condition the SUP, since this is going to be new to us, having a scrapyard under general industrial use in this type of area, if we could condition it to have them return to the Planning Commission in a year after they start operating with a report on what types of materials are they recycling, how much, how many trucks are they running, what types of materials are they running, just metals, what types of metals are they how, like Brian said, what types are they running cars, how many, what type of materials are they processing? Sam Taylor, can we condition them on that? And just a checkup to see how they're doing, to know if we did the right thing, and to see have there been any complaints from the businesses in the area, because this is relatively new for us. It feels like it's new. And to have an idea on the vehicles, the trucks that they're running, how many are they running? He said probably 4, but maybe they're running 2, maybe they're running 8. And that's something we should be aware of. And can we condition the SUP? Maybe this is something that we're already doing under code, but the SUP to be non-transferable to the business, not to the owner.
Thank you, Maureen. I think I can yield to Sam Taylor, but my understanding of special use permits is they're continuously monitored by the staff, and obviously these are very, very good suggestions that the staff monitor those. But I'm not sure, and again, Sam is our expert, I'm not sure we can condition special use permits or have them expire based on what they do or do not do. But that would be something that could come back to us if they are in violations of code for a special use permit. But I'll not have that be the final word, as I am not the legal authority. So Sam Taylor, if you could provide a good, concise legal answer to Maureen's questions about conditioning the special use permit.
Well, I didn't say expire. I said just come back in a year and let us know how they're doing.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Chair. Sam Taylor for Douglas County DAs for the record. Special use permits can be conditioned. There are a host of conditions that have been previously placed upon applicants. For example, the Bing gravel pit has a number of conditions, which includes a remediation report that needs to be generated. There are also requirements that you build up roads. That basically there isn't a specific limitation on the permit conditions. It must be related, I think, to the type of operations. I think it also, any condition you place upon them must be related to the jurisdiction of this particular board, or I'm sorry, commission. And it's not outside the realm of this commission's power to ask for some sort of report to be given, but I think, and I tend to agree with the chair in terms of this is an operational issue. So if instead of having them be submitted, I think, per se to the planning commission, normally you would have such reports be issued to staff. I mean, Bing was required to submit reports to staff. I don't think it would be outside the realm of possibility and legality to have the operator submit reports to staff in terms of the type of materials, the amount of materials, and what have you, including, like, say, for example, hazardous materials. I don't think that would probably be irritating to them because they probably do so already with California operations. So it'd probably be within their business model, and they've already taken care of those sorts of things. It's just a question of how you word it and frame it. And like I think Commissioner, the chair noted, submitting those items to staff, who would then bring that to the attention of the planning commission, is the normal route. You would have these sorts of reports provided to the planning commission. You could set up, say, for example, a periodic review of the permit every 5 years, which is quite frankly what the Bing permit had as well. There was periodic reviews being conducted. That was under NRS and also our code, which allowed for periodic reviews of mines. But it wouldn't seem outside the realm of possibility to have a set review period, like a year, and then maybe extend it out 5 years or something thereafter, something reasonable.
Thank you, Sam Taylor. Excellent answer. Much better than I was able to do without my law degree or knowing code as well as you do. Very good suggestion, Maureen. And perhaps if while we're moving forward with this agenda item, if you wanted to have some language that there would be a new condition A7 and phrase something up that when we get to that point in the process, we would look to you for your explanation of what you would think would be a good language.
I will let our attorney draft some language. He is much better at drafting language than I am.
Thank you, Maureen. Sam Taylor, if you could kind of follow the gist of what Maureen was expounding on, I think those are good suggestions and worthy of consideration. And Brian, so of course you can comment on where we're going on this.
So I think our gentleman from the public that stood up and asked a couple good questions, why don't we make them do what they do in California? Why don't we put a billion rules here that they have to abide by? It's because we're in Nevada. I'm not here to try and, make these operations have to send more stuff to the staff that's already buried in paperwork. I mean, to have them do additional paperwork that's not required of other facilities in other counties or anything like that. I mean, I don't want to sit here and keep conditioning just because we can. I was elected originally because the one thing I said that they like is that I don't like creating additional laws that are unnecessary. And in this instance, I feel like we'd be creating conditions that already the EPA, NDEP, a lot of these other agencies already have oversight on. So why would we as a planning commission want to get ourselves into the regulation of looking at what a business operationally does? I think that's ridiculous.
Thank you, Brian. Other members of the Planning Commission that would have questions or comments at this point? If not, I'd suggest we start to move forward toward the motions.
Mr. Chairman,
Nick.
I have a question.
Yes.
My biggest concern is with concrete recycling, crushing of concrete, dust created, and the impact on neighboring properties. Okay, you have neighboring light manufacturing facilities there that I do not want to see them affected by this particular facility. And that's one of the findings that has to be met, right? That you don't affect neighboring properties. So I'd be willing to consider a special use permit if we were doing metals recycling, but not concrete recycling. Because I have a lot of concerns about that. And maybe Mr. Silva can comment on that, but that's my biggest concern. Noise, dust, material handling and hazardous materials. I mean, I think the gentleman brought up a good point. I mean, we do not want to be recycling asbestos-laden concrete here, right? So maybe Mr. Silva can comment on that.
Very good points, Nick, and good follow-up. And perhaps, Mr. Silva, if you could return to the podium and give some responses. I think I recall, and I'm not finding in my packet, but I believe in some of the materials that R.O. Anderson submitted, basically you're doing everything indoors. You're not doing anything outdoors, so that will mitigate dust and noise and possible releases of anything that would be hazardous. But you're the expert. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think I saw some of those types of references in the R.O. Anderson package. And Maureen's pointing out she's done her homework better than I have on packet page 101, where it talks about other things will be batteries, radiators, other items with potential for leaking hazardous materials will be contained indoors. Conveyor systems of sport crushing, grinding, and baling of recyclable materials. Material processing will occur indoors. This is on packet page 101. Thank you, Maureen. You're very diligent in that. But Mr. Silva, could you expound on some of Nick's questions and concerns?
Well, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the process of grinding concrete, our whole plan is to have the ability to have our machine on site, but most of the time it will be out on site, because to haul concrete into a facility like that and try to grind it inside of a facility like that, yes, it can be dusty. So, and to go back on what I said about water, there is misters that you put on when you're grinding, and it minimizes it. It absolutely minimizes the dust like 95%. But to grind inside of a building or anything like that, it would be very minimal, if any, that we do. Our whole point of being able to have that ability is to accept concrete and be able to take it to a facility such as Douglas County or Douglas Disposal, and have these portable pieces of equipment that can go out on facilities and do the grinding. So actually, if that is a condition that we cannot grind inside of the facility with concrete, then we can make that a condition that we don't. I have no problem with that. Our main concern is having the ability to be able to go out on different locations and get the appropriate permits to process materials and minimize the dumping at where the landfills are getting filled up, and to give an answer to a question or a remark that was stated that we would be hauling asbestos, could possibly be hauling asbestos concrete from California. It would be physically stupid for us to even consider something like that when we deal with so much of it in California. I mean, we run a complete aggregate division, and part of it is we're abided by all the regulations in California, and would be more than happy to make sure that we're regulated the same in Nevada as we are in California. That's how our company is geared up. Our whole deal is to work together with the public. I have relatives here. My father-in-law lives here in Minden. It's a great fit for me, for our family, and my cousins, and so many people that live here in Gardnerville that grew up here. And there's more to just coming to Minden to start a recycling facility. It's for personal gain. We've had facilities in Montana. We can go to different locations, but I did choose Minden to be a part of our family, of what we can do for everybody here as well.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Silva, I appreciate that. So are you saying that you would accept a special permit if you were not allowed to grind concrete on site?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing your family roots here too. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Sam Taylor?
Yes, I would just like to note Sam Taylor, Douglas County DA again. I'd like to note for the record that regardless of where he does grinding or conduct his operations, AS Metals would be subject to county code relative to dust, noise, and other, provisions such as the time that they're operating, the quiet times and what have you. So even if they're not doing it on site, they're still subject to the dust regulations, and and just recently the fines for commercial activities went up with the approval by the board of the changes to the golf course ordinance. So I think, that there are more stiffer fines now for commercial activities who violate the county code relative to nuisance. So.
Thank you, Sam. If there are no other questions or comments, then I would suggest we move forward. Maureen?
My last one is, I brought this up and I didn't get an answer. Can we condition the SUP, last one, Sam Taylor, to be non-transferable, that it applies only to ANS Metals, and if that business closes for whatever reason, the SUP is retired. It does not, if some other business comes in and wants to do salvage or recycling, they have to apply for a special use permit under their name.
Yeah, Sam Taylor again, Douglas County DAs. Special use permits are applicable to the business type and not necessarily to the entity. In other words, they normally are something that you would deem to be transferable. It's because what you're doing is regulating an activity, not a person or an entity. So what you're looking at and what you're looking at doing in a special use permit is approving a certain use within a certain zone. So it's the use and the zoning that you're really regulating from the planning commission perspective, not who conducts it.
I guess my concern is we may get someone that follows who is not as responsible.
In which case, they can be subjected to county code enforcement, state regulatory enforcement, federal regulatory enforcement for failing to adhere to proper standards.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you, Sam. Let's go back and, if we can, start with the zoning map amendment, because these are two separate issues. And again, as we've closed public comment on this issue, but thank you. So if we can move towards the findings for the zoning map amendment, which are 4, and they are on page 94 of the packet. And if we could move to a motion on the findings, then we'll consider the findings for a special use permit and that agenda item. Lorenzo, you have the recommended motion. It can be pretty simple. It's also on packet page 87 for the zoning map amendment. And those are the findings. And again, if you have questions or concerns or problems, it would be appropriate as we're discussing this or as we're voting to note which finding would be problematic if this is a motion that would be something that would not be supportable. So I'd look to the members of the Planning Commission for a motion on the zoning map amendment.
So, Brian, for the record, I recommend approval of zoning map amendment DP 210221 based on the ability to make the findings in the staff report.
Thank you, Brian. Brian has moved approval of the zoning map amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Maureen seconds the motion. Is there discussion on the zoning map amendment? Again, these findings are on page 94 and on Lorenzo's screen. Seeing no discussion, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approval of the zoning map amendment signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed to the zoning map amendment? And there are no votes in opposition, so there's 5 votes in favor and no votes against, so the zoning map amendment is approved. We'll now move forward to the special use permit. And again, Lorenzo, if you can put up either the motion or the findings. The findings are on page 95. There's 8 of those. And then we do have the conditions of approval, and there are currently 6. And as Maureen had indicated before, she would like to have additional condition of approval. I know that there's been concern expressed by Brian on this. I think there's merits on both sides of the issue, but perhaps Sam Taylor, would you like to try and enunciate Maureen's conditions of approval regarding a report to the the community development staff on their activities, so we can have some language that would be a new A7 condition of approval?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Sam Taylor again on behalf of Douglas County DAs. The recommended condition could read something to the effect that the SUP is approved subject to the condition that the AS Metals will submit, or excuse me, the applicant or its successor in interest will submit annually to the Douglas County Community Development Department a report indicating the types of materials, the quantity of materials, and the amount of trucks that enter and leave the facility, which may be submitted to the Planning Commission for its approval.
Thank you, Sam Taylor. That was well spoken. Maureen, does that cover the kinds of ideas that you suggested would be a new condition of approval?
Yes, and it doesn't have to be for our approval. It can just be for our information.
Okay, we'll have the language say for the Planning Commission's review, perhaps.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, Sam Taylor again, Douglas County DAs. One thing that Mr. Booth noted is the initial statement made by the Vice Chair was to have it submitted once, or at least that was my understanding, so it wouldn't be annually, it would be just one time, unless I maybe missed the Vice Chair's intent.
Yes, it's just to let us know how they're doing, and if they're doing fine, we don't need to have it every year. As Brian said, they submit this yearly and to the state of California and the other agencies. So if they wanted to do it as a matter of course to our community development, that'd be welcome. If I'm sure our staff could request it and they'd provide it.
So replace the word annually with just once.
Yeah.
After 1 year.
After 1 year.
Thank you very much, Sam Taylor. Thank you, Maureen. So it'll be a report in a year. Brian, comments or questions on?
So on that additional condition, why do we care how many trucks are going in if we do not even have a traffic study required of this business? I mean, are we going to have every business from now on that needs a permit here tell us how many trucks driving in and out of their business? It's just ridiculous. I mean, the first 2 sound okay, and then we talk about how many cars are going in and outside of a business. Sounds kind of ridiculous.
Thank you, Brian. Other comments on where we're headed on this, the special use permit, the findings or the conditions? I scribbled what Sam was indicating, and do we want to have the clerk read back the information that Sam Taylor provided as a new condition A7? Would that be helpful to you, Maureen?
I definitely can't read your writing.
My shorthand is a little decipherable. Is the clerk able to move back in time and indicate, as Sam Taylor was describing, what we would be considering as a new condition A7?
Yes, sir. And this is Michelle Pavlov, clerk for the record. So I have a condition of approval. Are we including A7 or, okay, on A7, special use permit approved. Subject to condition, they will submit after 1 year to the Community Development Department types and quantity, amount of trucks that enter and leave the facility, and be subject to, submitted, to the Planning Commission for review. Does that sound okay?
Sam Taylor?
Yep. I'm sorry. I don't think that accurately captured my statements, if I may.
If you would like to modify, and then we'll have a amended, corrected, perfected.
Yeah, it was the quantity and type of materials, not the quantity and type of trucks. And then was the number of trucks, because that was what the vice chair had indicated she wanted in the.
Thank you, Sam. That's very, very helpful. Thank you, Michelle.
So can I ask a procedural question? Can we as a planning commission majority agree to an additional condition, or are we going to allow one person to write a condition that other commissioners do not agree with?
On a procedural basis, we could vote on the individual condition as an amendment to a motion. We still do not have a motion on the table. What I was trying to do in an informal fashion was craft the entire package at one point, and if that would be acceptable to the entire body, then we could move forward. But it's certainly every member's right to request that a portion of a motion be stricken or an amendment to a motion be stricken, but we still don't have a motion on the table. So
Well, I understand. I just don't want to say no to a special use permit when it's related to a condition within the special use permit.
I understand completely where you're coming from, Brian, and it would be my suggestion from a procedural basis that a motion be made on the special use permit to include the conditions of approval as in the packet, with the additional condition of approval A7, as Sam Taylor has indicated. And then at that point, once that motion is on the table, an amendment could be made to strike the new condition A7, and members would have an opportunity to vote on that as a standalone item. And then depending on that vote, we would then take a final vote on the special use permit, either as amended or as directed by the staff. Does that seem like a clear and fair way to move the process forward? Okay. Then at this point, I would entertain a motion on the approval of the special use permit with the conditions of approval, including the new condition A7. If someone would make that motion.
This is Nick Meyer. I'll make a motion to approve the special use permit titled 20.6.04.6.0 with the special conditions as outlined in A7.
Thank you, Nick. I think the special use permit is the DP 21-0222. The other was you reading the Douglas County Code. That's fine. I think we've got the gist of that. Okay. Unless there is other confusion. Is there a second to Nick's motion for approval of the special use permit with the conditions of approval, including the new A7?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Sam.
One thing, Sam Taylor again, Douglas County DA for the record, one thing that was missing was the approval of all other conditions as well. The only condition that was referenced was A7. So it should be approval of DP 21022 subject to all conditions as well as condition A7.
Thank you, Sam Taylor. I thought I heard him say that, or maybe I just assumed that that's the word.
So let me redo this. I make a motion, propose a motion to accept the special use permit DP 21-0222 and all other subject conditions, including the new A7 condition.
Thank you very much. Is there a second to Nick's motion? Maureen seconds the motion. So we have on the table the approval of the special use permit with the conditions of approval, including A7. Is there discussion or amendment? Brian?
So can I recommend that we vote on the first 6 in the approval? I mean, according to your procedural way, to remove 7 for a separate vote? However you want to do this, because I would like to vote on 7 separately than the first 6.
In the chair's opinion, the preferable and appropriate way to do it would be make a motion to remove condition A7. And that would be a simple amendment to the main motion.
Motion to remove condition A7.
Brian moves to remove condition A7. Is there a second to Brian's motion?
I would second it.
Christie seconds Brian's motion. Is there discussion on the motion to remove condition A7?
As I said before, we're just placing additional conditions. We're asking for things that are way in excess of what we as the Planning Commission should even be asking for. If we want to talk about the materials and everything, Mr. I can't remember his name from Douglas Disposal has said that they will be working closely with these people to determine the materials allowed to be done. And therefore, if they were doing anything that was against this franchise agreement, from what I understand is a very, spotty thing, but is very solid, that says that no one else could do anything in this county for any type of recycling other than Douglas Disposal. So we already have somebody that's monitoring this. Why add ourselves to the mix? I can't see a reason to add us as a monitoring body on any operational business in this county.
Thank you, Brian. Are there other people who'd wish to speak in opposition or in favor of Brian's motion to remove A7? Nick?
This is Nick. I believe that the motion is completely reasonable. We are moving from light industrial to general industrial. This is a new business in this area. We do not know how this business is going to affect other businesses in this area long term. I don't think it's a particularly onerous requirement of the applicant. I think the applicant is probably under much more regulatory jurisdiction in California than they are here. It's a one-time thing, and it's just a good visibility check for the Planning Commission. I think it's completely appropriate.
Thank you, Nick. Other comments on Brian's motion? Maureen?
Exactly. This isn't monitoring. This isn't regulating. This is just for our information. Just so we know what goes on in a business that we've never had before. It's simple as that. One-time thing.
Thank you, Maureen. Christy, any comments from your end at this point?
No new comments. I think Brian said it all very clear that, we're not California for a reason. I see these all the time in our California conditions of approval, and it's not us, and I don't think it's our purview to understand exactly how every aspect of their operations work if they comply with the requirements that we've set forth in the code and their conditions of approval.
Thank you, Christy. Brian, you make excellent points. I do think that as a regulatory matter, the Planning Commission should fall very low on the totem pole. We have experts. I don't mean to say that the members of the community development staff are not very good stewards of our industry and our community. And I do think on a regular basis they do have input from all of the experts on the county staff and the community that alert us to problems and concerns. I am always mindful of the burden on businesses by additional conditions, additional regulations. I always, when I go through the conditions of approval like I did on the first one, try and count them up. And I think on the first one we had 36 conditions of approval. At some point it gets to be one condition too many. So I'm very torn. I hope the applicant will exercise their due diligence in always assisting the county staff with monitoring of the types of things that we've gone through. Nick has raised some very good points. Maureen has raised some excellent points. I think Mr. Silva has explained to us that he wants to be a good steward for this community and a good member of this community, even though his business has been in California before, and I hope we can welcome him to the community. So I would be opposed to the additional condition and in favor of Brian's motion at this point. Other comments or debate before we call for a vote on the motion that Brian has made to remove condition A7 from the original motion?
Mr. Chair.
Sam Taylor.
Yeah, Sam Taylor again, Douglas County DA. Just a reminder, it takes 4 for an action. So in order for the motion, Mr. Olin's motion to stand, it would take 4 votes.
Thank you, Sam. Is there other discussion on the motion? Okay, I will call for the vote. All those in favor of Brian's motion to remove condition A7 signify by saying aye.
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 And all opposed to removing condition A7 will say nay.
Nay.
So on this vote, there's 3 votes aye and 2 votes nay. That's not a majority of the total 7 members of the Planning Commission. So the motion is not approved. And now we would go back to the original unamended motion to approve the special use permit and the 7 conditions of approval in the original motion made by Nick and seconded by Maureen. Is there discussion or debate on this motion? Maureen?
Well, my concern, I don't want to hold up the SUP for this business solely on the basis of a report back to the Planning Commission. I would ask the original maker to remove condition A7, amend his motion to remove A7, and hopefully on the nature of his good heart that the applicant would just, by the way, walk by the office and let us, or come by at the end of a year when he's operating and make a public comment and submit something to us. So Nick, I would ask you to amend your motion.
Thank you.
Remove A7.
Thank you, Maureen. Nick, as the maker of the motion, you would be required to.
Well, I don't understand why you are making this request. 4 votes pass the special use permit.
We don't have 4 votes.
Are you sure about that? Why don't we vote on that?
It would be the chair's opinion that we get 1 vote on this, and everybody has the opportunity to make up their own mind at the time of voting based on discussion, debate. Maureen makes a good suggestion. I think you've made very good arguments on why a report and a review would be necessary, but we are in a position now where we have one chance to vote up or down, and if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. We can't necessarily go backwards. We can do reconsideration motions. They sometimes get a little bit difficult, but that would be my sentiment: is to move forward as the consensus would seem to suggest. Brian.
So would you be removing your second of the original motion?
Yes, I am.
So Maureen has withdrawn her second of your motion, Nick. We can put your motion again and see if there's an additional second to your motion, which would be approval with the entire 7 conditions of approval. So I would ask the members, unless you wanted to withdraw your motion entirely.
No, let's put my motion to a vote and see if it is seconded.
Okay.
Let me repropose my original motion and see if there's a second.
Okay. Nick, the motion would be, again, that we would approve the special use permit with 7 conditions of approval that would include the language that in A7 that Sam Taylor as previously expressed. So is there a second to Nick's motion for approval with the 7 conditions? Seeing no second, then the motion dies for a lack of second, and we would then move to a subsequent motion.
So I move to approve special use permit DP 210222 based on the staff's report and ability to make the required findings, including the additional conditions placed on the applicant, 1 through 6.
Brian has moved approval of the special use
I
permit.
second.
Thank you, Maureen, or thank you, Christy, for your second. So the motion is to approve the special use permit with the 6 original conditions of approval as suggested by staff. Is there discussion? Maureen?
1, I don't play poker very well. I do not have a poker face. And number 2, when this goes to design review, I would ask that consideration be given to those extra 30 parking spaces and have them be crushed granite, as opposed to asphalt. And thank you to everyone for their patience while we work this out.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you for your diligence and your concern for making this a good project. I think your thoughts and suggestions are very well taken. Other comments on the motion that Brian has made for approval? Seeing no other discussion, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve the special use permit signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed to the motion?
Nay.
Nick is opposed. So in this vote, there's 4 votes aye and 1 vote nay. Nick, did you want to put anything on the record as far as reasons for your vote? The Board of County Commissioner always finds it helpful if members can expound either a specific finding that they believe could not be met or other issue that they feel is lacking and cause their vote in the negative.
Yeah, I thought it was perfectly reasonable that since this is a new business and that we are changing the zoning from light industrial to general industrial, and it is not completely clear in my mind that this particular business will not have some type of impact on other businesses around it. I thought it was extremely prudent that we did a 1-year review of the applicant to see how the business was running. But I appreciate, being in the minority on that. But that was my thought.
Thank you very much, Nick. That's always very helpful. I think that concludes the agenda item number 2. So we will then move to closing public comment. At this time, public comment will be taken on those items that are within the jurisdiction and control of the Planning Commission or those agenda items where public comment has not already been taken. Again, if you will proceed to the podium and state your name, and you can continue with your public comment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, with respect to crushing concrete and suspicion that there might be asbestos in it, and given that they want to take it outside and they suppress the dust with water, where does that water with asbestos go? That's my only comment.
Thank you very much. Is there additional public comment, closing public comment?
I just want to thank you all for hearing what we have to do and what we can do here in Minden as well as Douglas County. And I appreciate the votes, as well as I will send in a report 1 year into it to show you what we can do. And you guys are the fellow people around Minden will be very impressed of what our company takes pride in what we do. So, and we will share that with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Silva. Additional public comment, closing public comment. Seeing no additional public comment, we'll conclude the meeting. I do want to again thank the staff, Lorenzo and Lucille, for their excellent presentations and work on this, and Sam Taylor and Sam Booth for all of their good assistance. Jeremy, thank you very much for participating and helping us through this meeting. I want to thank the clerk's office, as usual, for their excellent work, and the additional staff who've worked on this issue in the preceding months. Thank you also to my fellow planning commissioners. It was a very thoughtful meeting with of lots of good discussion and debate, and I appreciate the fact that we could come to a good consensus and that we were able to address the matters that people thought were of concern. So thank you very much, everyone, and I will declare the meeting adjourned.
Recording.